Well, I really think you're going to like our next guest. If you're a basketball fan, pro or college, you know who Eric Musselman is. He's the new coach at USC. He coached in the NBA as a head coach for the Warriors and Kings. He was an assistant, Magic, Hawks, Grizzlies, T-Wolves. He's coached under Chuck Daly, worked under Jerry West. Now he's dealing Doc Rivers, Mike Fratello. You've got such a labyrinth of college and pro basketball stories. One of the things I want to start with is Jerry West recently passed away. I can remember the Pau Gasol trade when Kobe got Pau Gasol, and Jerry West was engineering this whole thing. I remember being on a plane on a tarmac, and I called a friend, and I said, "Did you see the Pau Gasol trade? Who engineered that?" My buddy's like, "I think it's Jerry West." Jerry was the guy that told the Warriors, "Move off Monte. He's great. Go Steph." What was the secret sauce? Because you're a basketball savant. I mean, that's your reputation. Intense. You know the sport. When you're around Jerry, to you, what was the secret sauce with Jerry? What made him so? I mean, he obviously had great experience, Eric.
Yep.
But what was it like to be around him and pick his brain?
Well, he was so competitive. Will to win was beyond belief. Everybody in pro sports is pretty competitive. But he took it to another level. In the draft room, he was the most competitive person. I remember being a part of 2 drafts with him, and the intensity in the draft room was incredible. And then you look back at like his time in Memphis, which is when I had the opportunity to work with him. Look at who he hired as a coach. It's Hubie Brown, and Hubie Brown had been out of coaching for, I think, 14 or 15 years. So he brought Hubie Brown out of retirement, basically, to coach. And then when Hubie retired, he brings Mike Fratello, who had been out of coaching for 7 years. And the reason I thought that's so unique is Jerry West, really pro player, but he went out and got true coaches that were not former players necessarily. And I always thought that was really unique, but it's because he thought those 2 guys were the best coaches at that time for the organization. So his long-term vision, unbelievable. But I do remember the first time I talked to him, I was coaching the Warriors, and there was a trade made. And all of a sudden, a couple days later, the secretary for the Warriors said, "Hey, Jerry West is on the line." I'm like, "Man, the logo, what?" So I pick up the phone, and he goes, "Hey, so-and-so just got traded to you as a young coach. I just want you to know you'll never make it. You'll get fired. He'll get you fired." Click. I'm like, oh, wow, I'm 30-some years old, head coach in the NBA, and the logo just called me and told me the guy we traded for is going to get me fired. And I hadn't coached the game. So,
wow.
But he was pretty close to being right.
Let's talk. I asked you during the break, this is fascinating. I said, you coached in the NBA as an assistant and a head coach. You were young. I said, and you're known as a strategist. You are a guy that is working, you're working the chalk, both sides. You're working the refs, you're working your team, you're working your assistants. Was there ever a guy, I asked you, that was intimidatingly good at strategy, and the name you gave was?
Hubie Brown. I remember the first time we played Memphis when I was with the Warriors, I told our staff, we got to be up at least 9 or 10 heading into the 2-minute timeout, because if not, we got no chance. Because Coach Brown was so great late game. And I had worked for him several years before that and saw what he did in timeouts, the preparation, and how he could take a play pattern and alter it on the fly and make it simple through his instructions in the timeouts. Never seen anything like it in my life. And so I knew then going against him, like, hey, I cannot outcoach this guy in the last 2 minutes. And so I alerted our staff, like, hey, man, we got to have a double-digit lead or it's over.
You also coached under Chuck Daly, the legendary. I mean, he and Pat Riley, they looked like CEOs. The suits, the hair.
And Coach Daly would let you know it, too.
He would.
He would tell you, get out of the mirror. I need the mirror space pregame, like you'd assistant coach be, getting his tie done right. And Coach Daly would walk right up. I need the mirror now. Move, please.
Now, he had that ego and the vanity and the gravitas, but yet it worked. And a lot of times players would be turned off by that. What was something about Coach Daly that was a marvel to you?
Well, he could always predict the future. It was absolutely unbelievable. he would see things like he would say, hey, in 10 games, we're going to be super tired. And then 10 games would go by and we'd be super tired. Like he could always figure out the nuances of his team. The most amazing thing is he had this presence, this air about him, but he really had no ego. It was unbelievable. Like he looked at himself like an average guy. Now the dressing part was super important to him. Every road trip, he wanted to go shopping. Every road trip.
Just like McIntyre. Yeah.
So, but in all reality, he was a true player's coach. Like he, in practice, he really believed in giving the assistant coaches a voice. He said that when he spoke in a huddle, he wanted to be like E.F. Hutton. He wanted everybody to listen, all ears towards him. So he felt like they didn't need to hear his voice all the time.
That is really smart. That is really smart. So he was a word efficiency guy.
No question.
The assistants can bark at practice. When I talk, it's game meaningful.
No doubt. And he talked about how he broke down how many meetings you truly have in a 24-hour game day. You think about all the timeouts. You think about pre-practice. You think about shoot-arounds. You think about your 40-minute meeting. You think about your meeting at 20 minutes. So he said all these meetings, think about how tired the players' ears are of listening to the same voice or the same message over and over. So he was really careful not to use a lot of words in front of his players.
God, that's so smart. Dan Hurley is the coach of the moment in college basketball. I didn't think the Lakers was a good fit. I said, listen, when I saw him at a Billy Joel concert a day later with his wife, I'm like, he's a New Yorker. He's not coming out to L.A. La La Land. But I said, I didn't know, and I think he's great. I said, I don't think Bill Belichick would have been a good college coach, but yet I think John Gruden would have been, stylistically. You worked in both. I said, I don't know if Dan has the patience or the league has the patience for him as an NBA coach. If you go look at Rhode Island, if you go look at his jobs, he deconstructs. Lakers don't like deconstruct job, right? They got LeBron and AD. Tell me what do you think Hurley would have worked? And I think he's the best college coach now.
Yep.
You think it would have worked in the NBA? Did he make the right choice staying at UConn?
I think his choice is his choice, but I do think that any great coach would come to find out really quickly that professional sports is a players' league, and it's way more of a partnership. And if you don't turn it into a partnership, you just cannot last in that league at all. And I think Coach Hurley is so smart and so brilliant that he would have figured that out really, really quickly if he wouldn't already know it. I think that a lot of college coaches that are thinking about the NBA level, I think if you talk to enough NBA coaches, head coaches, or assistant coaches, I think you understand really quickly that you have got to partner, especially with your star players. And if you don't, you're just not going to make it. The players are going to control so much in that league, and for good reason. They are the star of the show.
I am a fan of college basketball. I do think, in just my opinion, the NBA kind of, with Adam Silver, demonized it. And I always think college football is the best microwave. So by the time Tim Tebow goes to the NFL, he's a household name. I know Zion because of Nike and Duke. I have a feeling that the NIL will keep a few players around, maybe like a Zach Edey for one more year, and you'll be able to get a kid that may have been a G leaguer, and it's like, Kansas is going to pay me $450. I'm going to go to Kansas. I'm on the outside. I think the NIL could actually fortify college basketball. It's still a revolving door of talent. What do you think? Can the NIL, because everybody laments the NIL, but I think to myself, could it actually help the sport?
I think it can help the sport with certain players, but I think, a year ago we had Anthony Black, who was a lottery pick, and there was never a discussion with Anthony or his mother, Jennifer. There was never a discussion about, hey, let's have Anthony come back and he can make name, image, and likeness because he's a lottery pick after 1 year. You're a one and done. You got to go. But I do think for certain players that are maybe marginal guys, because if you're talking about a player who's a late second-round draft pick, he's a star in college. So I do think some guys that are borderline, maybe 45 to 60 picks, maybe those guys can participate in college for one more year and have a little bit more patience. And then when they're ready to go pro, maybe they go from 60 to now 38 in the following draft. And so if you can have those conversations that make sense and a player can make more money over time based on his draft value, and then it also elevates a player when you look at marketing opportunities once he does get to the NBA. Because let's face the facts, somebody like Carmelo Anthony, when he plays the 1 year at Syracuse, that elevates his marketing as well.
Oh, no question.
Same thing with Kevin Durant at Texas. So I think college can be really, really good from a marketing standpoint.
Oh, I totally agree.
So plus, I think there's some great things with it.
Yeah, plus the programs all have deals with Nike or Adidas. I mean, so you're going to get those companies behind you as well. It's really interesting it does appear to me the AAU system is a bit broken. I tend to think America has the most good basketball players, but the top 5 or 6 guys in this league are increasingly international players. And I don't think it's because our kids don't work hard or they're not good people or good. I think what happens is the European system, whereas it's an academy, you play fewer games, the games mean more, you play against older players. AAU is a million games on the weekend. It's all about getting the bag. I think the system right now is better in Europe than here. You can't, badmouth AAU because you're recruiting it all the time. But is there an argument to be made that the European system, if we could tweak ours, that they do some things better at a fundamental level early than we do?
There's no question right now when you look at the draft, and if you go back,
it's crazy.
It's crazy. I mean, you think about 30 years ago, the Atlanta Hawks and Stan Kasten were way ahead of the game when it came to evaluating overseas. And I remember the draft with Dirk Nowitzki. I was in Orlando at the time, and 3 weeks before the draft, we did not know who Dirk was. That's how far scouting and everything has come, too. That wasn't that long ago. But now the coaching overseas, absolutely phenomenal. Some of the best coaches in the world are not coaching in the United States. And for so many years, great American coaches went over there, coached, did clinics, taught the game the way that the Americans played. Now the coaching, we're stealing ideas and schemes from them. It's amazing. Even NBA teams, there's a lot of NBA teams. Hey, let's go get so-and-so to be an assistant coach because he's so creative, offensive-minded, and he's been coaching in Italy or Spain or Serbia or wherever. And then you think about the player and the level of talent. Right now, if you could project another 10 to 15 years what the NBA draft's going to look like, it might look a lot like baseball, where you're talking about a lot of Dominican Republic players and you're talking about a lot of Venezuelan players dominating the draft. It might turn that quickly with basketball as well, because it's trending in that direction right now, unless we can fix some of the grassroots stuff that's going on here in the U.S.
I got to tell, I used to cover Tark, so I need you to be vulnerable here because I ask all.
I roomed with Tark's son at the University of San Diego, George Tarkanian.
Oh, George Tarkanian.
Yes.
So I've said this before. We love this game. I wish I was an NFL GM. I thought Juan Dixon out of Maryland was going to roll in the league. I loved him, and I later found out he was a tweener. Don McClain. I was sitting with Tark, and I said he would play at Simi Valley or something. And great, legendary basketball player. Now a Clipper announcer. I'm like, Tark. I was watching him at a tournament in Vegas. I'm like, I don't get it. He doesn't jump. He scores. And Tark's like, he's going to be all NBA. So Tark knew his stuff. So I remember telling Mike Dunleavy, Yao Ming's just another tall guy. He's like, he's going to be unbelievable. So I whiffed on a million guys. Give me a guy, 2 of them, that you spotted early and wasn't a big recruit, but you feel like you nailed him. And has there ever been a great player that you didn't buy and you looked up 5 years later and went, wow, that kid had a lot of heart and really made himself into something?
I would say if I had to look back and think about a player that maybe I didn't think was going to be a unbelievable player, I went Orlando Magic general manager John Gabriel asked me to go watch Vince Carter play against Bethune-Cookman in Daytona Beach.
Yeah, he could jump.
And I went over there and I watched him, and he was always grabbing a body part, and his athleticism was awesome. But I was like, I told Gabe, I said, I don't know if he can really be an NBA All-Star. And that's the one guy. That's why you can't go watch a guy one time, because obviously Vince Carter was unbelievable. Yeah. But it was a 40-minute game. I watched him play probably 20-some minutes because it was a blowout game. And I came away and was like, I'm not sure. And that I looked back and said, boy, are you stupid, which is also why you've got to constantly call people that are either coaching them in a training room.
That's the Jerry West secret.
You have to.
Now, give me a guy that you found. You guys all have somebody that you loved early.
Yep. I say a guy that De'Aaron Fox, as a young player.
You love him.
I watched him for about 30 seconds, and I don't know where he was ranked at the time because I had just entered college basketball, but I remember watching him. It took like 2 or 3 minutes to say, this guy is just different. He's on a whole nother level.
Yeah.
And I think that the more you do this college recruiting stuff, the stars that are just guys that are going to be lottery picks, they're easy. You don't have to convince yourself that they're good.
Right.
You automatically can say, that guy's going to be a lottery pick. And there's not many, but when you see it, you kind of know it and feel it.
You've coached at Nevada, Arkansas, and now USC. It is a big city media, big city restaurants. Are LA kids just naturally a little softer, a little more entitled? I heard years ago a college football coach said, you come out here, they all got 2 iPhones in LA, and they got cool shoes, and they're all stylish. And I'm like, he goes, that's not like what they're like in Wichita State. Is recruiting an LA kid different at USC?
I don't really think so. I mean, I look at, when we first got started at Nevada, the first place I went to was L.A. And we ended up getting Lindsey Drew, who was a starting point guard for us for 4 years, and he was an L.A. kid. And, yeah, he has a cool factor to him for sure. But his dad was an NBA head coach. And we felt like the L.A. market, because of who you're playing against as a high school player and local AAU events as a really young player, meaning 2nd, 3rd, 4th grade, they're exposed to so many great players at a young age that we actually felt like it's an unbelievable market. And then obviously being at USC now, it's got to be a great market for us.
Yeah. Eric Musselman joining us. You've coached in the D-League, the Mountain West, the NBA. You've coached Chuck Daly, Doc Rivers, Mike Fratello. You've coached Penny Hardaway, Rasheed Wallace, Scottie Pippen, Pau Gasol. Gasol was a fascinating player.
Unbelievable offensive player and a unbelievable IQ. He was an underrated passer. And when you can find a player that makes
Kobe loved him.
Oh, for good reason, because everyone loved playing with him. He was unselfish. He was a great locker room guy, super egoless, and was fun to be around. Like, he had energy that you were like, hey, I want to go hang out with Pau Gasol.
Yeah. Somebody told me that Penny Hardaway had the best pre-NBA workout. Kobe and Penny Hardaway had the 2 best. Now, when were you and Penny together?
Yeah, so it would have been Penny's, I think, maybe 3rd year, because he played for Brian Hill.
With Nick Anderson, Shaq.
Yes.
Dennis Scott? No, maybe not. Was Dennis
I think
on
Dennis
that?
Was with him, yes.
Yeah.
And then I joined the Magic with Chuck Daly, so that was Chuck's year. And then I was also with the Magic when Doc came his first year. But Penny was part of the year with Coach Daly, and it was Nick Anderson, Horace Grant.
Somebody told me he did things in practice that were insane.
Because he was now we talk about positionless players.
Yes.
He was the guy that was the positionless player that could play the point, that he could guard a 4-man. He had unbelievable vision. Like when you're an NBA assistant, you're like, I can't wait for the tip-off to see what this guy does. Penny was one of those guys. So was Jason Williams. White Chocolate was, like, when I was with him, I couldn't wait for the game to start because it was like, this man's going to put on a show tonight.
He was great.
And you never knew what he was going to do. And there's these certain guys that just have incredible flair, and Penny was certainly one of them.
JuJu Watkins, USC basketball star, women's basketball star. If I'd never seen the play, tell me about the game. her game?
I mean, first of all, she's the biggest star on campus. I can tell you that. And that's super cool when you think about women's athletics, that JuJu is a national brand right now.
So you're the scout. I'm your GM. I want you to go scout JuJu. Eric, tell me about her.
She can do everything. I mean, she can draw free throws attempted. She can make threes. You talk about a player on a big stage as a freshman that could take her team as far as she did.
How she uses her body.
Yeah, she's got unbelievable body control. She can finish through contact. She can seek contact for free throws attempted. Stretch the defense out with three-point shooting. Just had a phenomenal freshman year. And the shirt I got on, this is actually a JuJu Watkins shirt from the bookstore. I went in, I'm like, man, that's a great logo. You know, I'm in the bookstore looking for stuff. I looked at the price tag. I'm like, wow, like it's $100 T-shirt. And then I looked at, hey, it's JuJu Watkins shirt. Let's get this thing.
By the way, you're 59 and look great. You've got incredible energy. I think a lot of that, from what I've heard, I talked to people, told them you were coming on the show. You really love what you do. You have a great energy. Now, I know you have to get on a plane and recruit. Is recruiting easier or harder today?
Well, I've only been doing it for 10 years, collegiately. Yeah. So I would say that it's become harder each year that I've been a part of it. When I was at Nevada, you had to sit out when you transferred.
Yeah.
So we had a great formula. We felt like, hey, we always want 4 sit-out guys that we can develop and have patience with. And then that means you only got 8 or 9 guys on your active roster, so they're all happy. Yeah. So your locker room is easier. One thing that I don't think people are talking enough about with this, you don't have to sit out transfer-wise. Now you have 13 guys on scholarship. There's always going to be 3 or 4 guys that are unhappy. So what is your locker room like? And it also, there's more guys now not playing. And they're losing eligibility while they're not on the floor. When you had the sit-out thing and you sat for a year, then you got more guys were playing minutes then. And so I think that's a little bit of the development piece, because really the only way to get better truly is to get significant minutes. That's how you improve as a player, where you can learn on the fly and you can learn through mistakes and you can play through mistakes. And with 13 active players on a roster, it becomes more challenging to let guys play through their mistakes. But when you have 4 guys sitting out, you have no choice. You're rolling with a core group of 7 or 8 guys, and I think guys got better that way.
Jay Wright would get 3-star guys from the DMV, build them, they'd stay in college. It was great chemistry. John Calipari went one and done. That's a way to do it. If you were at a Kentucky, like where you can do either way, what would you prefer? I think
you got to have a blend. I think that, when I look back at the group that I had a year ago at Arkansas, a team that got us to the Sweet 16, we had 3 freshmen that were one-and-dones. And I love that formula. I think if you get a freshman who's really, really talented and is going to be able to play in the NBA in 8 months, what a challenge as a coach to say, man, there's an obligation to make sure this player gets drafted higher than what's anticipated. That's a great challenge. It's also an incredible responsibility for a coaching staff when a parent says, hey, we want this young man to be developed, to get him ready for the next level, and you got 8 months to do it. And I look back a couple years ago with Moses Moody, who was a lottery pick. Yeah. He led us to an Elite 8. And the thing that I've learned is you got to let those guys play early on, and then when you get to March, then you'll get the payback. And it might not happen right away in non-conference. You might see a team slip up a little bit if they're playing a young guy that's going to be a one-and-done. But you certainly hope come March Madness that those players can lead you, because in all reality, you can't win without star players and without players that are you got to win in college with NBA prospects, or you're just marginal team.
Yeah, I got burned a few years ago. I watched Kansas in December, and they had some one-and-doners, and I'm like, they're terrible. And then 3 months later, they're smoking people. To your point, these kids got to grow. I just felt like I went graduate seminar of basketball. Eric Musselman, USC basketball coach. What a pleasure to finally meet you. You've had a remarkable career, fascinating. Kick butt at USC, man. Hi, everybody. It's me, Uncle Colin. Subscribe here to get the latest from the herd, including exclusive behind-the-scenes videos and more, wherever you may be, however you may be watching. Thanks again for making us part of your day.